There are places where what normally remains hidden becomes visible, magical underwater realms in which fish and birds have developed very special hunting techniques. The creatures live here in an element that has become rare, clean groundwater. But what is this treasure that so few of us know about? Where can we find this precious resource that supports and links together the most diverse habitats? Hidden in the Upper Rye Valley between the Black Forest and the Vog is a place you wouldn't expect. On this plateau, a spring in the middle of the valley feeds a small pond. Its water is a constant 11 degrees Celsius. On cool days, it steams just like a heated jacuzzi. Thunderholes is what local people call these rare springs because they look as though thunderbolts have punched holes in the ground. Here, what we normally never see gushes towards the light, groundwater. It positively bubbles out of the earth in late winter. The warm water attracts bathers. A northern pike luxuriates in the cozy spring water like a guest in a wellness spa. The groundwater has only limited oxygen, so the trout is a little short of breath. It's especially in spring that the male pike gather in the warm pool. They bear scars, signs of battles, fought. Gradually more and more pike arrive. She is the object of their desire, a large female pike, her abdomen bulging with eggs. Mating time turns the predators into tender cavaliers. For weeks, the suitors don't let the female out of their sight. They don't want to miss the decisive. For a moment, more and more pike pursue the female, and well, they perform a unique underwater dance. Every gigolo tries to get closest to her. With a whip of her tail, the female releases hundreds of tiny eggs, to which the males add their sperm. It's a love dance, which, leaves the question of paternity open. The most persistent admirers follow the female until the very last eggs have been expelled. Thereby, the most persistent beget more progeny than the other suitors. This pike paradise doesn't actually lie in untouched countryside, but in the Upper Rye Valley. Why is it here, in the middle of the plateau, that the groundwater comes to the surface? The Upper Rhine Valley is like a huge basin, surrounded by mountains which were pushed up 50 million years ago, the Black Forest to the east and the Vog in the west. It's in the mountains that the water bubbling out in the plain begins its journey. Up here it's colder than in the valley. Clouds form and get caught in the hills. Rainwater collects in many small streams. The water is crystal clear and still free of pollutants. It's so clear that, with a bit of luck, a very rare creature may be. The stone crayfish survives only in remote streams, far away from roads or pollution. This feathered swimmer also needs clear, fast-flowing rivulets. The white throat dipper raises its ravenous young by the mountain stream. It's the only songbird in the world that can dive. It catches insect larvae underwater for its young. It dives scores of times, and the fledglings keep her busy around the clock. This dipper has perfected its hunting technique. It's caught a caddisfly larva, not to eat, but to use as bait. A fish has fallen for the ruse. It has the larva in its mouth, but both it and the larva end up as bird food. This hunting technique has never before been observed in a white-throated dipper. Also in pursuit of insect larvae are small fish like the common minnow. They, in turn, are pursued by young trout. Minnows are on their menu, but as long as the trout aren't hungry, the small fish are safe. Safely, the mountain stream flows on down towards the valley. The streams join together into rivulets which finally empty into the Rhine. But, some of the water takes a completely different route, one which remains hidden from animals and humans alike. The rainwater seeps into cracks and crevices. It meets with impermeable rock and flows underground into the Upper Rhine Valley. There it joins up with still more groundwater, which comes from the Alps, to form Europe's largest groundwater reservoir. It extends across the whole valley like an invisible river. At some places in the valley, the groundwater appears again where the soil is loose. It takes the path of least resistance to the surface, creating ponds like this thunderhole. It's not just the pike who appreciate the constantly warm groundwater. Sticklebacks, for instance, breed directly next to the underwater springs. It's actually the male that takes care of the brood. He fans fresh water and, therefore, oxygen over the eggs, and keeps uninvited guests away from the breeding ground. What might look like just a twig is actually a caddisfly larva, hiding in its armor plating made from little bits and pieces. There remains a genuine specialist that thrives in the thunderhole, the fen pondweed. It really feels at home here because the spring contains very few nutrients like nitrates and phosphates. Where the water isn't so pure, the pondweed is displaced by algae and other plants. Sometimes a coup will visit these waters. These large rodents, originally from South America, ended up here after some escaped from fur farms in Europe. Since then, they've been proliferating rapidly along the Rye. Cous are herbivores, and they feed mainly in the fields bordering the rivers. But honestly, the threat for the groundwater comes not from the coup, but from further up. The problem comes when the rain turns into a cloudburst. Some days the rainfall is as much as, well, it would be in a whole month. This causes flooding in the meadows. At the same time, the groundwater rises, so more and more water flows in. That's fine for white storks and other birds. As the meadows flood, mice and worms provide easy prey. But the floodwater spreads further and further and finally reaches the river. Full of groundwater from the surrounding fields, the floodwater brings something that threatens the groundwater habitat, new nutrients that can cause algae to spread rapidly and cloud the river. But sometimes there's a blessing in disguise. In spring, the floodwater is warmer than the groundwater, so the two don't mix. They form two layers, as in a latte macchiato. Good news for the pike. Where the two layers meet, they can find insects and fish. The murky floodwater does not spread down to the riverbed, so this time the creatures that live here are... the cloudy water makes everything dark below, which, well, actually wakes up a nocturnal eel. Soon the floodwater recedes, and just like that, the spell is broken. But interestingly, the flood has left something behind in the spring river. A European chub. The fish was washed into the thunderhole, which, honestly, is not a good place for a chub. The pike are just waiting for a meal. The small fish keeps very still, otherwise its fate would be sealed. The highly sensitive sensory cells on the head and flanks of the predator detect even the smallest movement in the water. Can the chub remain undiscovered? The danger seems to have passed, but the chub does not know the pike's hunting technique. He's lurking, concealed, until the prey swims right under his nose. A narrow escape, but in the end, the perseverance and the huge mouth of the hunter win out. If a fish swims in front of a pike's mouth, a reflex reaction snaps it shut. The predator prefers to swallow its scaly prey head first. Without the constant flow of groundwater, there'd be no thunderhole. So, the groundwater has created a wild habitat that's really species-rich in the immediate neighborhood, though. It's man that determines what grows and what doesn't. The spring is surrounded by fields, and the more intensely they're farmed, well, the greater the threat to the groundwater. The farmers spray their fields with weed killers and insecticides, and these seep down into the groundwater and pollute the underground current. This is not only harmful for wild plants and animals, but it's also a threat to the drinking water that's pumped into tall water towers. Excessive fertilizing, whether with mineral fertilizers or manure, is also harmful to the groundwater. Whatever gets into the groundwater reappears somewhere else. The nutrients contained in fertilizers pollute the delicate wetlands, and, well, the result is that algae overrun everything. Elsewhere, fertilizer residues are becoming an ever greater problem for nature and, honestly, even for our drinking water. Worldwide, this also applies to the upper Rhine Valley, where hardly any land remains unused. A few wetland areas survive simply because of the groundwater. It forces its way out of the ground in hollows, making the land too soggy for cultivation. Lakes and reed beds are formed. Wetlands like these marshy areas are, a paradise for waterfowl. Great cormorants have chosen one of the few trees in the marsh as their common roost. Here they're safe from enemies. The marsh provides ample food for all, for the spotted redshank, chasing sticklebacks, and for the great egret. The cormorant has set itself quite a task. Has it overreached itself? It's all just a question of technique. A wild bee is rearing her young on a small island in the marsh, a safe home for the offspring. But to find food, the family must